Hi, Mark here. Welcome to the channel. Today we're doing these miniature felt stockings with free motion embroidery embellishments, applique, and beading. That sounds like a lot, but it's all super simple. Hope this just sort of sparks your creativity and makes you want to make something for Christmas. All right, let's get to it. I'm going to start off showing you what you need for the project. Obviously, you're going to need your stocking pattern. You can draw your own. I'm going to have these patterns in my Etsy shop. There'll be a description or a link in the description for those if you just want to get my patterns and not worry about it. That's an option for you. Or just draw out your own and do whatever design you want. And then I got, once again, my favorite wool blend felt from Etsy. You'll need your embroidery thread, specifically if you're doing the free motion embroidery on your machine. If you're doing hand embroidery, just use regular hand embroidery floss. But if you're going to do the free motion embroidery, like I'm going to show you specifically on this video, I use the embroidery threads meant for embroidery. That's a hard word to say multiple times. I'm using the threads specifically designed for embroidery machines. So yeah, they just have a really nice luster to them and they come out really nice. Hi, Editing Mark here. I forgot to tell you the bobbin thread when you're doing the machine embroidery, the free motion embroidery, you can use just regular thread. I have done that on your bobbin. You could also get the bobbin thread specifically made for machine embroidery. So either way, try it out, see which one you like better. This will make your life easier. It's not necessary, but I think this is Wonder Under. It's called by Pellon. Well, you could do this project if you just want to glue the stockings together. That's awesome. You can sew them like I'm going to show you. It's a great beginner sewing project if you have a machine and you're a little intimidated to use it. Yeah, I say go for it. I intentionally made the stocking pattern the size so I could get 2 of them on one sheet of this felt and then use the little scraps for the appliques. And this felt is 12 by 9. So you could also you could definitely use the craft felt from Michael's for this as well if you didn't want to get the wool felt or if that was harder for you to find. These would be great little gift card holders. You could hang these on your tree, and then if you're giving people gift cards, that they would also have a nice little keepsake from you. So you know what I decided I'm going to do is, because I always wanted to back them with a different color felt, so, but I want this to show through because it's pretty, so I think what I'm going to do is do a pinking shear around the edges, and then when I lay this on top, and I'll cut this out, and then you'll see this little color coming through, and it'll just be a neat little detail. So you can see, then we just have this little contrast edge that comes up. I think that'll be really pretty. And here are all of the stockings cut out. And you can see on some of them, I did the pinking shears on the inner color, and on some of them, it's on the outer color to just give variety to it. And I did one of each shape in each color combination. So if you're trying to figure out how many colors do I need, what should I do, this is kind of a good way to do it. So I have 2 colors on each in 3 different varieties, so that's 6 colors. And so what I did, I cut one of my felt sheets in half. Actually, I cut 2 of them in half that I'm going to use for the leaves. And then I cut a piece of the Wonder Under, and then this is the paper side, and then the fusible, the side with the sticky fusible stuff is there, right? So then I'll just iron this side, and then I'll leave it. I'm not going to peel it off yet, because then I'll take my leaves, trace all my leaves on here, then cut them out, then peel that off and put it on and iron them down. After I cut out the leaves from the paper pattern, I traced them onto my felt that I fused the Wonder Under onto. This is for the mistletoe. It's kind of a stylized mistletoe. And then I did the same thing for the holly leaves. And whenever I'm tracing the shapes of my hand-cut shapes, I like to flip them around so I to get different angles, and you can see some of these leaves for the mistletoe, like the points are going one way and some of them are going the other way. So I want all of the sizes to have be going different directions and all that. So that's my little trick to just give me a little bit more variety of shapes when I go to place them. So that is your next step. Now I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the free motion embroidery and give myself a little background to build off of. I forgot to mention in the materials list that I will also be using a tearaway stabilizer. You're not going to see this. This I just put underneath it to give the fabric a little more stability and support doing the free motion embroidery. So you don't need this, but it is helpful. If you're going to use metallic threads for this technique, I do recommend getting the embroidery needles specifically, or the sewing needles just specifically made for metallic thread. They have, like, the way the eye is made on them makes it so that when the thread is passing through it multiple times, it doesn't fray that outer gold or metallic finish on it, and you get a lot less thread breakage. So I do find them to be worth it. These next parts are going to depend on what kind of sewing machine you have. This machine does do embroidery, so I just use the embroidery foot that comes with it. But if you don't have that, you could just find any foot that lets you kind of see where your stitches are going and kind of experiment with that. For free motion embroidery, you have to disengage your feed dogs. Those are those little things that with the teeth that come up and they feed the fabric through the machine. You don't want those to be functioning for free motion embroidery because you are guiding the fabric through. So you just have to look on your machine and your manual as to how you disengage the feed dogs. It's usually very simple. And so what I want to do is just do a little bit of a swirly gold background that will give my leaves a place to kind of rest on. Just start stitching, and then you just guide your fabric through, and I'm just making swirls. And you can't go too fast, but you see, so it's just doing that. So I'm just going to give myself a little design to put the leaves on. And so that just gives me a little something to build off of. So that's where we're going to start. Then after you do that with the tearaway stabilizer, you just have to tear it away together, and so you can leave those pieces. If you want to dig all those out, you can, but it's going to take a minute because of all your lines. And I don't try to do it all in one pass either. You know what I mean? You can stop, and then I recommend cutting your thread there, and then you can come back up here and work down again. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't have to be just one continuous squiggle or swirl or scroll. You can stop and start and come back up and fill in another area a little bit more, or what's great about it is you have some control, but not complete control of what it's gonna look like. So it's just kind of freeing to have it not be perfect, I think. The next thing you'll want to do is cut out your leaves that you traced onto your felt, and then position them where you want them. And keep in mind, this is mistletoe, so I'm going to do either a little cluster of beads at the center of each of these little clusters of leaves, or a little like pearl button or something. I have both, so I haven't decided which one I'm going to use, but you want to think of them as little clusters and little sprigs of mistletoe. Then after you get them positioned where you want them, You're going to pick them up and you're going to peel off that paper backing on that Wonder Under and put it back down. And you're just going to do that with all of them and then iron it down and they'll be secured, and then we're going to top stitch on those. Here's Future Mark giving you another pro tip. Don't let your iron directly touch the tearaway stabilizer because it'll melt it and make your iron yucky and gross. I may or may not know that from actual experience. But you want to keep this sort of loose too. I start by just doing like the center vein down the leaf, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And then I just sort of follow roughly the shape of the holly leaf. And it's not supposed to be perfect. And then I sometimes do some lines going like that. See, it's just supposed to accentuate it. And that's the charm of free motion embroidery. You know, it just sort of gives an impression of detail without being perfect. I finished all of the top stitching that I wanted to do on them, and instead of sewing these two together right now, I'm going to sew the beads on that I want to. So I opened, that is so loud. I opened up my little stash of beads and pulled out a container here, and I found these that I think will work as the little mistletoe beads. They're like slightly different colors and shapes and finishes, but I like that because I like the mix of textures and colors and stuff because they're all sort of still in the same tone. So I'm just gonna then place these, you know, and get like a nice, kind of figure out how I want to put them, and then and stitch them on. Whatever thing inspires you. Like for me, it was the colors of the felt. So that was my springboard from there. So if you have some beads that you want to use, or if you have some fabric or felt that you want to use that as your starting point, and then go from there and pick out other things that go with that, you know? And if you're picking out stuff that you really like, you're going to like how it turns out. Now on this one, I'm going to have the beads closer to the edge here, so I'm going to stitch this down first and show you that as an alternative if you decide to embellish, you know, closer to the edge on something. And then also to hang these, I'm going to do a loop because then you can put a piece of wire or a ribbon through that loop and hang them wherever you want, on a tree or drape them on a mantle or whatever. But I just cut a 1/2 inch wide piece of felt, and this one is... it's about 5 inches long. And then I'm just gonna, but you can make your loops as long as you want, but just make it a 1/2 inch. And then I'm just gonna do that fold, you know, where you take it and you bring the two ends here. So it's flat, and then you bring the two ends together and cross one of them. So then you have a nice little loop like that. And then I'm gonna pin this because I'm just gonna stitch that when I stitch these two pieces together. Stitch that up in the corner. All right, so I'm going to stitch this and then we'll be back. So you can do it either way, whichever way you feel more comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with beads being on here while you're sewing, go ahead and stitch it on first and then put your beads on. The ghosts of projects past coming to haunt me over here. And then I just double stitch a few times over the loop because it's thicker and you're ending the stitch there. Here. Now, if you do stitch the things together before, just you know, you can't stitch all the way through. You know, you don't want to close it by stitching from the back through. So you're just going to have to go in. Unless you want to sew it closed. I mean, you do you. This is waxed thread. And I like that for sewing beads on. So I'm not going to worry about it not being red. You can use regular thread. You don't have to use wax thread. I just have it, and I prefer to use that when I'm sewing beads on, so I'm going to use it. But you don't have to go buy special thread for this. Do I want to do a little one there? Oh, that's kind of pretty, right? Yeah. It's kind of expected to do 3 berries the same size. You know what I mean? Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to do it differently. So do what you're feeling. Okay. And then, you know what? Then we're going to stitch it. I like to bring it through the back and then clip it, because you can leave the tail a little longer because you're not going to see it. Oop, don't cut a hole in your stocking. That would not be good. You know what? It might be easier to just kind of come like this for it and then take a stitch and then cut your tail like that. Oh, do we want to do... Oh, at the toe. That would be cute, right? So here are all the finished stockings and a little bit of the mess that I made while I was creating them. I will be doing a future video showing how I decorate with these on a tree. So if you want to make sure you see that, be sure you're subscribed and that you have clicked the notification bell. And in the meantime, like this video and comment on it. Let me know if you have a favorite stocking out of the ones I did, if you have ideas about ones that you might do and some variations. And yeah, maybe click on one of my other videos and give it a watch if you haven't already. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.